I'd like to introduce Megan. Megan, I stole some slides off of your site, so hopefully that was okay. Off your site, I mean off of Twitter. So really want to thank you. I see the whiskeys. Was that a whiskey or what was? Yeah, bourbon there. So appreciate that. Maybe we should just have a bourbon tasting sometime.
Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Yeah. And those have to happen. Well, I guess we could have it virtually, but they're more fun when they're in person. So, I really want to thank you for your time. WSUS Nerd, really appreciate all your time because you participated in our last MMS. Is that right? I think you were at our last MMS.
Yeah, I was just kind of floating around, no presenting or anything, just kind of hanging out.
I think I saw you at the Carnival Bar. What is that? What they called it? The
Carousel Bar. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Good. All right.
All right. Let's see if this presenting thing works.
All right.
And that's the screen. All right. Are we good?
There it is. WSUS stuff, totally off the cuff. I see. Yep, that and a window behind it. So I think we're good.
Yeah. There's some stuff behind it. All right. Okay. So this is totally off the cuff. Basically, we'll be just going to do kind of what I want to do. We'll show you some scripts, show you how kind of updates are built. This is really more about the WSUS backend, not so much the configuration manager. Configuration manager just kind of piggybacks on WSUS. It does do some of its other stuff, right? It pulls the metadata into the CM database, but we're not going to talk about that today. All right, the obligatory about me slide. Basically, I did configuration manager support. I specialized in software updates. And currently, I'm a content developer for Configuration Manager. So all the stuff on docs.microsoft.com is me, and then my partner in crime, Aaron. Things I'm good at. No, I'm not good at PowerPoint, apparently. So things I'm good at, WSUS metadata, WSUS, the Win update agents, and old and crusty, like weirdo updates things. Things I'm not good at, presenting. So this is a little new for me. Any of the new stuff as far as like, hey, this Windows update agent for this brand new version is doing this. Yeah, kind of out of my wheelhouse right now. Content. Hey, DPs, no, I don't know anything about them. Except, if I had to, I could do it, but not really. And operating system deployment, except where updates are concerned. Kids, I have 7, 2 dogs, 3 parrots, 2 chickens. Fun stuff I like to do, books, usually sci-fi fantasy, and oh my God, no Kindle versions, Dead Tree Edition or bust. Lego, and then of course, as you saw, bourbon, whiskey, that sort of stuff. Pet peeves, toast, crumbs, and butter, reply all the mass emails, dog earing pages and books. Oh my God, if I loan you a book and you dog ear it, we're going to have a problem. And talents getting coffee stains on my shirt. My humor is sarcastic and self-deprecating, and there's my Twitter handle. All right. So you're caught up on
type of intro slide, Megan. I think maybe next meeting we'll just have everybody go around the table like that. That's great.
Yeah. It's a Microsoft thing. They're like, hey, you need a walking deck. And I'm like, what the heck is a walking deck? And they're like, oh, it's just a little thing that says all about you. I'm like, okay, so let's put some stuff in there.
Great, thanks.
All right. First things first, we are going to go. I do have an agenda-ish, and we'll probably go off of it. GitHub, WSUS Nerd. WSUS Nerd is the place you want to go, and usually the scripts will be there. So first things first, I have a 2012 R2 box, and it's got nothing installed except, a couple of updates. And it's a lab machine, so I really don't care what's going on. It doesn't have to be totally legit. And what I want to do is I want to avoid that first initial sync where you're getting all the products and updates and classifications, and it's taking 3-4 hours. Super annoying. So basically, what I do is I start with a nice, pretty SUSDB. And this folder is empty. SSDs, there we go. And I say, okay, this is a clean sync. I'll show you how to get these, don't worry. And I'm going to copy it into folder where it's going to be expected. All right, first things first, we got SQL installed. This script is very, very basic, right? It's just for me, for my lab. Feel free if you want to like do some fancy PowerShell and do error checking, all that other fun stuff, go for it. And we're going to run this selection. What that's going to do is that's going to just basically copy this SDB, MDF, LDF, attach it, all that other fun stuff. Okay, great. We refresh. And yeah, you can run this thing in one entire fell swoop. It'll work. There's my SSDB. Okay, great. We're going to install WSUS. Oh man, guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to run selection. So we'll see. It's going to do everything. Fun. And let's see what happens. It might get caught at the post install.
I've done that once or twice. Actually, just hit the run all and boom.
Yeah, run selection, run all. I wanted to do it kind of step by step, but apparently had other ideas.
Yeah.
And this is how basically I will rebuild the WSUS in, a couple of minutes rather than mess around with, I consider typically this SDB to be completely disposable. There are, of course, a couple of caveats to that. You're doing third-party updates. You got to be a little bit careful. If you're just doing Windows updates, forget it, right? Just start again. All right, let's see if the post install is good. Temp, we're going to temp 2. Okay, so temp 2, and where are we? So I think it's going to fail at post install, to be honest. I was having issues with this machine a little while ago. 2391.
Megan, we did get a request if you can make the screen bigger if you're able to.
Oh, I do have that zoom it thing. Hold on. Or, you know what? Let's see if I can. Let's try to just zoom in.
There's also a hot tip for anybody that's on the receiving end. I think is it shift scroll, control scroll? Yeah, you can control scroll on your own screen to also zoom in. Yeah, there's Sandy's beat me to it.
Yeah. Let's go on screen 2. Let's see if I can just bump this up a little bit.
Teams is also pretty wicked about if you just share your screen, it'll maximize it to everybody's screen. I mean, if you just share the window. Right on your whole desktop.
I've always had issues like sharing just the window, right? And I'm going back and forth between stuff too. Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, so bumped it up a little bit. Yeah, post install is not going to be happy. I'm going to tell you that right now. All right, so typically what you'll see is your temp file will be a 0-byte file. You'll see the WSUS util use custom website, completely normal. Once WSUS util use custom website disappears, then you'll start seeing the temp file actually build up. So disappears, and let's see what we have in here. Well, hey, the post install actually completed. I'm impressed. All right. And I said I was having issues with this machine earlier. So basically what this does, installs, does the post install, and then super important, change the SSID. So your WSUS has a SSID in there. You do want to change it, and it's pretty simple. It takes like 2 seconds to do. If you ever kind of wonder, it's like, oh, where did you get this? This is actually an old trick when you were moving WSUS from 3.2 to 2012, right? It was just, this is basically a database migration. Now, I can't say that support is actually going to support a database built like this, but kind of the argument can be made, hey, it's just kind of a database migration. I mean, that's kind of supported, right? So, but don't quote me on that, all right? Okay, so we got WSUS. Let's go over here. Great. All right, you can usually ignore this, but we're not. I'm going to show you actually how to get this SDB built. So basically, next. Yeah, you're going to go to Moo. I don't need a proxy. And then you're going to start connecting. So right here, it tells you, hey, I'm going to download basically products, classifications, and languages. Once this actually stops, you know, and it'll be a little while, you can cancel out of it and go ahead and stop the WSUS service, stop IIS, and you're going to grab a copy of that SDB, right? So then, hey, just in your lab, you want to mount that sucker up and make a whole bunch of WSUS servers, go for it, right? That's what it's for. You don't have to wait for it to sync again and again. And then I'll refresh mine periodically. So probably about like every 6 months to a year. So it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, let it sync when you're asleep. All right. So you see I have everything set up. You know, I basically accepted all the faults. Boom, 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 boom. And if I go to my products and classifications, if you're familiar with the WSUS database, the flat one that comes with WSUS, it's like all 2003 stuff. So basically, if I see Windows Server after 2003, which I am, hey, I'm seeing all my Windows 10 stuff. Yeah, great, it worked. Okay, so I have 0 updates. At this point, I can specify my products and classifications, do whatever I want, and then synchronize just little things and be on my way. So that's pretty much it for building WSUS. It doesn't take a lot of time. I know people typically go, oh, it's going to take forever to rebuild. I'm like, no, man, no, it doesn't. Just use this. I forgot my train of thought. Sorry. It really doesn't take that much time. Okay, so, well, what happens when we synchronize, right? So these are some old synchronizations. What happens when we synchronize? Well, we go to Microsoft Update, and what happens on the back end, if you look at like a SQL profiler, when this is going through, what you'll see is you'll see it running like you'll see it running an SP import update. So, okay, so I know it's running a stored procedure. All right, so let's go take a quick look at that stored proc. And don't be afraid to look at the stored procs. You can actually learn a lot about how updates are built by just looking at these stored procedures. Am I at the eyes yet? No. Import update, there we go. Let's go modify that sucker. Yeah, whatever, go away. Who else does that? I'm sure everybody does. All right, so I'm looking at my import update store procedure. I get an idea. I don't have to be a SQL expert to kind of get an idea of what's going on. Okay, I see I have an update ID. Okay, I have a type. What is this update type thing? That's interesting. Okay, explicitly deployable, and we'll discuss explicitly deployable a little later. Local update ID, language. Okay, so pretty much everything you expect. Okay, reboot behavior, et cetera, et cetera. All right, and you're just kind of scrolling through, right? And this is kind of basically how I learned to play with WSUS. Look through here. Oh, okay. Oh, look, I got some error messages. So typically what you'll see is these error messages will show up in the software distribution log. And if you're not familiar with the software distribution log, this guy is actually your friend And people forget about it all the time, right? Because most of us are focused on configuration manager. So we're looking at WSync manager, WCM, WSUS control, is everything working? And we forget to go back to WSUS. So update services, log files, software distribution. All right. Yeah, and you can kind of ignore those. So don't forget about this. Really. Software distribution log can tell you a lot. Hey, my upstream is Moo, so it's Microsoft Update. Product version, all that other fun stuff. 6.3 is obviously Server 2012 R2. Okay, so if I had an error, let's say on synchronizing updates, a lot of the times what I'll do is I'll go into the stored procedure because I know, hey, it's running an import updates, and I will do a search for what's going on. Right, so I'll look at the error, and usually I'll only do like part of a string. Error importing, okay. Error importing, so this is actually all other fun stuff. Oh, whoa, what is this? Okay, so error creating table XML. Okay, so I'm leading you. Sorry, I know exactly what that's doing, but what is this XML thing? All right, something to put in the back of our head. Localized properties, Okay, so you get the point. What you'll also see is it'll go, hey, it's a driver, or it's a product or a classification, or it's actually just like a regular security update. It's a prerequisite, whatever the case may be. So don't be afraid to look at the stored procedures. Okay. So let's say I do my synchronization and everything comes back fine, but I'm not going to synchronize because that's really not how I roll, right? Okay. And start. All right, so stopping WSUS, and guess what we're going to do again? I really don't want to synchronize updates. I don't want to wait for updates to synchronize because, let's face it, I'm a little lazy. So go into SQL. Bye, buddy. And bye. Yeah, let's close the existing connections too. People don't realize WSUS is really, really tolerant of what you do to it. Right? There's not a lot that you can do to mess it up, except just go delete rows from the database. Which, let's not do that unless we know what we're doing and we know how it's all built. Deleting the database, remounting it, no problem. Just go for it. Especially in your lab, obviously, not in production. All right, see, and SSDBs, guess what? I have another set that only has 2019 in it. And guess what we're gonna do? Copy the suckers in here. And let's remount. Let's see if I get this right again. Run selection. Selection. And we wait. While we're waiting, let's go ahead and flop over to a different machine. So what do these updates kind of look like? We talked about, we saw that little blurb that said, oh, get XML. Well, what is this XML? What the XML is it's actually metadata. So it describes the update, and then each bit of metadata, sometimes, it's a parent-child relationship, or in some cases it's leaf or children or whatevs. The SSDB likes to call it is leaf. I like to call it a child update. But what you'll also see is when we synchronize, basically what we're doing is we're doing other things, but we're importing XML into the WSUS database. Now, this XML is typically not human readable. You might catch it off the wire, but it's SSL, so probably not. So I'm going to kind of show you what it looks like behind the scenes, and a lot of the times you're not going to see this. So that's kind of cool. And for those of you who were griping about Notepad++, come on. So what I have here is basically 4 different sets of XML. And I wanted to pull something super old versus something super new. Well, not really super new because I can't pull the super new stuff for you. Sorry, I like you guys, but not that much. Right? I like my job a little more. So this is a 2003 update. This is the parent update, which all the parent update really does is say, okay, what languages am I in? Great. Here's all of your descriptions and all the languages, blah, blah, blibbity, blah. Go to the bottom. Oh, cool. So here's my list of superseded updates. So WSUS is reading this, it knows what's superseded. Here's my list of prereqs. And obviously, these look like update IDs, right? TB update table is your friend. We keep on going and end of prerequisites. And here's where it gets kind of cool. So these are my bundled updates. So this is the parent-child relationship. So a lot of the times when you're looking at like a Windows 10, you'll see it's just a one-to-one relationship. When you're looking at older updates, you'll see it's more of a many-to-one. All right, so what does a child look like? So the child is actually where all the applicability rules are coming in. So is this actually applicable to the machine? So there's a couple of different ways and a couple of different things it's going to check. Prereqs, blah, blah. All right, so we're going to check and see if it's installed right here. And Okay, so I'm looking for Win32K sys greater than or equal to this. Okay, that's how I know it's installed. If it's less than that, obviously it's installable, meaning, hey, it needs it. So when we look at like updates for 2003, XP, you'll see that a lot of this, a lot of the applicability rules are really, really easy. We also had 12 KBs per OS per month or something like that. Then they started actually just combining them, going cumulative updates. It actually started with Server 2008-ish, where you started seeing a CBS trusted installer. All right, so this is old. Well, what does new look like? Okay, so here's parent update. This is an old Win 10 update. I think it's like 1607 or something. There's a KB number somewhere in here. Oh, yeah, there it is. Win 10 RS1. So I think that's 1607. KB number, blah, blah. All right, so it looks pretty similar. Looks like the same. So just the parent is all the same, except, oh, here's a whole bunch of relationships. Great. Okay, supersedes. So this is actually a long update in a supersedence chain. Great. Prereqs. Okay, great. And here's where your bundled update comes in. There's a single bundle for the update. Well, what's the metadata look like for that? And Notepad++ might have a cal. We'll see. While we're waiting on that to load, I happen to know that that metadata file for this bundled update is about 131 meg. There it goes. All right. That didn't take as long as I expected. Here's your KB, prereqs, all this other fun stuff. Okay, so here's the kind of cool thing. So is installed. So we have a whole bunch of different update handlers, right? So you have MSIs, you have CBS. CBS is going to be what's called here. CBS, great, and is installable. So basically what's going to happen is when the client actually sees this, it'll be like, oh, is this installed? And CBS, your CBS log is going to go nutso because it's going to go through all this stuff. Blah. And yeah, there's about 131 megabit, right? So there we go. And obviously, so we're looking at, let me see the sizes of these. Metadata. Presentation stuff, metadata. So when we were starting, I'm just going to bring this over here just for giggles. So when you're looking at updates and you start griping, going, oh, WSUS is being really slow. Well, it used to munge on, this is 6 KB and 45 KB for a single update for 2003. And Win 10, 63 KB and about 131 meg, right? And it's pulling that out of this SDB at any given time.
Megan, question for you. Mm-hmm. Why do they bundle even if there's only one update in the bundle?
That's just kind of the way it works, right? Because you need kind of a placeholder for multiple updates. Languages, all that other fun stuff, right? And then you go to the applicability rules. And occasionally, typically you're only going to see those, you're only going to see one nested level. Occasionally you will see 3. Typically those are going to be on like the old skip, or sorry, I can't call it that anymore. What is it? Defender, Microsoft Defender now. Mm-hmm. A lot of the times that will go down 3 levels. So it'll be bundles of a bundle of a bundle.
Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
But that's kind of how we expect it. And then they might also have different binaries. What you'll see also in this metadata is there will be file information. I forget if it's at the bottom or the top. Let's go to 2000. Let's go to 2003. It's easier to find. Yeah, files here. So it'll say, hey, this is files. Okay, this might be specifically for English. It might be for another localized language. It might be a number of different things. So when you're talking about like a .NET, at least it used to have like 2 files. There would be 2 files bundled, and then it would have 2 children. So the parent would have 2 children with .NET. And then also the parent, if it has multiple bundles, it can also say that, hey, I am not applicable to a machine unless both of these child bundles are applicable. So that's some pretty powerful stuff that it can do. Or it's, oh, hey, if one of these is applicable, that's great. Okay. All right, so what does this look like? Hey, it succeeded successfully. We'll reset the server node. I might just have to open it and close it. Let's just close it, open it. Oh. Shh, don't tell anybody, I'm not going to change it. Yeah, whatever. Okay. So at this point, should have more updates in here. Should being the keyword if I put the right database in there. Uh-oh. I might have put the wrong database in there. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I did. Sorry, that's 50K. It should have been like 80K. We'll move on. We're pretty much done with that anyway. All right, let's go to Server 2019. All right, so let's say, how are these updates in WSUS? So, delete updates. No. Okay, so let's say for giggles, I have a WSUS that I actually imported updates from the catalog. And in this case, I actually did. Well, how do I want to make sure I'm rebuilding my SUSDB. I want to make sure I bring them in again. How would I find that? There's this little thing called TV update flag, right? And I will give you these queries as well to say, hey, you have 3 updates and from catalog site. So all of these things and learning about this TV update flag, all of that comes from reading that stored procedure, the import updates. Great, I have that. Okay, let's see what the heck they are. Boom, 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 boom. Execute. Oh, I forgot about the works one. Yeah, so here's my Windows 10 version, 1607. Those are the 2 that I brought in. ED is explicitly deployable. That means it's actually, this is the parent update ID. A child will show is leaf instead of explicitly deployable. Right, great. Oh, just for giggles. So let's actually deploy an update. And I think I'm good on time for right now. I have a 2012 box. Let's go ahead and deploy a 2012 update. And let's go back to the state, actually. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh, we're at the top. And sure. Let's do these. Okay. I'm going to click approve for all computers. Install. Let's give it a deadline. Sure. Now, obviously, Configuration Manager would be taking care of all this for you. It will not be deploying through WSUS because basically all it cares about is the metadata, right? It has its own mechanism for doing this. But I want to see, oh, crud, I didn't want to do removal. Okay. For install. Just for giggles. All right, better. Right, close. All right, we're going to do our 2012 R2 buddy, and just in case, this guy was actually giving me a hard time, so I do have an extra one just in case we need it. And let's go ahead and let's look at some updates. And here we go. Sorry, I know that's kind of hard. All right, so I actually already have this thing configured. Basically, I've gone and added a couple of registry keys, right? I'm not worried about dual scan. I'm not worried about any of that other fun stuff. This is basically just some reg keys, right? So AU options 2, that's just download and notify, use my WSUS server, no auto update. So I'm actually setting that to 1 in some places and 0 in another. WSUS server, I'm just pointing it, and root status server, and then you restart the Windows Update agent. All right. Right, so Windows Update agent, or Windows Update client, actually. We're going to tell it to detect. And I think this is software distribution. And that's my temp file. All right. Oh, man. That was the problem. Hey, did you want to replace these? Oops. All right. Windows Update. And you could probably guess why I chose to use Server 2012 as a client. Anybody know why? 3 guesses? Mostly because the Windows Update log.
Because you could read the log.
I didn't say that out loud. It's so I don't have to run a power. Yeah, basically so I don't have to run the PowerShell. There you go, Windows Update log, wait, and oh, some events don't drop to the ETL until after you actually stop it. Okay. So 1308, yeah, 19. Okay, so I found, let's go through the Windows Update log. And this is going to be, I'm sorry, I know this is kind of crash course. It's like, hey, here's the Windows Update log. There's actually a nice little site that I will pull up. This one should look familiar to you. it actually describes kind of how to read the Windows Update log. Hey, this is where it is. Yeah, I don't care about registration. Hey, there's that CBS log we were talking about earlier. And it actually shows different components, right? Here's the agent, expression handler, perfect. PT is actually one of my favorites. This is synchronizing from to the local data store. So this is part of your synchronization. And yeah.
Hey, you mentioned that with the newer logs, right, quote unquote logs, that some don't even write until you stop the service. Do you have any more detail on that or some nuggets to share?
No, so some of those don't get dropped. And this is old, right? I haven't looked at the Windows Update agent in depth in probably 2 to 3 years. But it used to be, and I suspect probably still is that some of the events don't actually go in until the service is stopped. Now the service usually auto stops. So once it actually gets done, then you can actually look at the log. And sometimes you can actually get some good information dumping the Windows Update log in the middle of an actual scan too, right? Sometimes you don't need it. Occasionally you do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and no problem. It's like I said, typically new stuff, it might actually be really great. I'm working on old information. I'm just going to make the assumption.
The comments in the chat, I think everybody just loves the new method of having to get the logs out for this. It's very sarcastic, but yes.
Yeah, I like my job. I love my job.
we like you and your job too. So
I understand. So imagine having a whole bunch of cases on your plate, and I need to watch the Windows Update log, right? What's going on? So watching the Windows Update live, watching the Windows Update log live and update live was actually really handy with troubleshooting. Was really handy with troubleshooting.
Anybody remember the first time you saw CM Trace and live logs actually being rolled? I've still shown that to people and dazzled them today, people that are familiar with it. Great way to do this.
Ooh, and don't forget Control L, my favorite, right?
That's right.
Error lookup, and then obviously filtering. I love to filter.
Yes, there are lots of little cool tips here. We've done them in tips and tricks before, but we should probably do a session in a user group here just of tips and tricks on CM Trace.
So this did its thing. It did, hey, it was CBS evaluating, it's adding updates. So I have 3 updates that are applicable. And we're gonna go through like the highlights, kind of what I look at and what I kind of think is important. The first thing is the caller ID. All right, so Windows Update command line. Well, that's pretty much what I did, Windows Update command line. You'll probably actually be pretty familiar. So you'll see CCM exec in here. You'll see WSUS, which is also one of my favorites. I think I have a log from a WSUS scan somewhere in here. Oh, there it is. Click way back there. Man, screen scaling just doesn't work too well. Hey, there's a WSUS call. So the Windows Update standalone installer, and I think I was installing. What was it? WinRM51 or something like that. All right, so I can there's actually multiple little bits, right? So this is, hey, I'm gonna find updates. I'm gonna queue it for a little while, then I'm gonna find. So you'll actually see the whole scan actually takes a little bit longer than you think, right? So don't think that it's over. Okay, so here's an end. Great, resume, Let's see if I can find the very beginning of this. Start, you search for updates. Here it is, find the updates and all of it. Here's my criteria. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Boom, 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 boom. If you were doing a little bit of programming, you can actually change this criteria. That's all in the Win Update Agent API stuff. Here's my WSUS server. Yeah, WSUS-ish. And we all know client web service. That's what it's going to be talking to for the most part. And here's my synchronization. Synchronization. And during this time, so 1308, what you'll be seeing, especially if I was starting with a new EDB file for my Windows Update agent, in case I should probably define that in case you don't know. The Windows Update agent typically stores everything under the software distro folder, right? So Windows software distribution folder. I'm sure a lot of you are pretty familiar with actually deleting this guy. Here's your data store. This is your little database for your Windows Update agent. If you crack this open, you'll see a whole bunch of revision IDs. You'll actually see the SSID, but we're not going to crack that open right now. There's some pretty cool stuff in there. Yeah, there are some more logs. It's nothing really big. You can kind of see if you want. I find the Windows Update agent. I'm sorry, the Windows Update logs a little bit better. All right. There's your files for downloading. Okay, great. Then what you'll also see Windows, I think it's under logs, if I remember correctly. About the same time, CBS is doing its thing. 110. Yeah, it rolled. Let's see how much we got. So cached applicability. So this is doing applicability check. Great. I wanted to actually see something. Don't be freaked out by errors in the CBS log. Some of them are, you'll see a lot of noise in this. Some of them are important, some of them aren't. Typically, because it is a really noisy log, most of the times it's not that big of a deal. If you're worried about it, check your event viewer. Hey, am I having an issue? And CBS was going nuts. 1308. And you'll see it's trusted installer. So you could actually put these and the Windows Update log together. There's also old school way. I don't know about the new way. You can put your Windows Update log into verbose logging. And what you'll see when Windows Update log is in verbose is you'll actually see it running through that XML file that we looked at earlier. I'm not going to bother doing it. I'm actually going to pull up like a OneNote I have so you can kind of see.
Question for you while you pull that up.
Mm-hmm.
The notorious software distribution folder, is there any value in whacking that thing? Does it help us, hurt us, anything good, bad, ugly there?
Yeah, it can actually, yeah, whacking that thing out can get really ugly at times. So what happens, that our good old little like EDB file in here, it has a little cache, right? So it knows what updates it's scanned against. So unless the revision changes, so it goes from like 201 to 202, there's been a change on it, it'll be like, oh no, man, I saw that before. I'm just we're good on that one, right? And it's doing some high level checks. So it's not completely like, oh, I'm just going to ignore it. But it's super quick. It's not going to go into CBS and do a whole bunch of crazy stuff like it would if it had never seen the update before. Okay. But the downside of it is you got to rebuild your EDB file, man. Right? Mm-hmm. So that can be really hard, especially if you're using like an older operating system. So let's say 1607, let's say 2012 R2, right? If you have like a slew of these things approved, or in Configuration Manager's case, right, a lot of these you're scanning against stuff. It's not approved in WSUS, but Configuration Manager wants to know what the applicability of an update is that maybe you haven't really deployed for reporting purposes, right? I mean, it's pretty important to know for reporting purposes. Oh yeah, this is applicable to 2 machines out of 100,000 or whatever the case may be. So Configuration Manager is actually forcing the Windows Update agent to scan against some updates you necessarily might not care about. And it is doing basically a full scan. So now imagine you have, 20,000 clients. All of a sudden you send out a script and you're killing that software distribution folder. You want to force everybody to do a full scan. you can imagine what happens to that client web service is it starts pulling all this metadata for those clients again, right? Now, configuration manager, obviously, it's a lot of the times there you don't have like the 20,000 clients scanning against WSUS all at once, right? It is kind of staggering them, and it's kind of helping with that. And there was an update for WSUS, I don't know, a couple of years ago that helped with pulling the metadata out. Is it much better than it was? Yes. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's good enough, right? I usually don't have too many issues with it. Not like we did, 4 or 5 years ago when you could decline every single superseded update and WSUS servers were still barfing on themselves. Right? I don't know who lived through those days, but those were pretty rough days. Yeah.
Right? Yep. Yeah, the last thing you want to do is, like Brian mentions, trigger a full scan on everything, right? So this is kind of a last ditch effort, I think, for software distribution or whatever.
Yeah, you really don't want to do it unless you have a need for it. What I also kind of want to put in the back of your head is that when you're actually sizing your WSUS servers, you're wondering how much RAM to give it. Go ahead and assume that your clients are going to do a full scan, and they are going to do them over that period of time, right? So if you have 20,000 clients and they scan every 24 hours, go ahead and assume that at your peak, you may have every single client scan against your software update point, or the back end is WSUS really, which is doing the applicability. Just go ahead and size it for that, right? Unless you want to just bump down your scan to every 7 days just to get through a problematic period. Because what happens is occasionally there'll be updates to the Windows Update agent itself, and that can also trigger a full scan. The new SUS ID that I showed you will trigger a full scan, new WSUS server. So when you're starting to talk about WSUS servers sharing the SUSDB off the same primary site, the reason you do that is that's SID, right? You don't want it. You don't want a client going back and forth between WSUS servers, different SUSDBs, and having to do a full scan every time, right? It's like, oh no, all these revisions are different. I'm on a new server. I get to do a full scan, which you want to avoid if you can. But occasionally, sometimes you just can't. So put that in the back of your head. Go ahead and plan for the worst, right? Worst case scenario, hey, what's your breaking point, right? I need to know every 3 days what my applicability is, in case you get into a jam, and go ahead and plan for that.
Yeah.
All right. This is not like, 15 years ago, it's like, oh, if I scan once a week, it's good. I don't think all of us have the tolerance to do once a week anymore.
No.
Especially if you're pushing out definition updates, right? But that's actually a different type of scan. Remember how I showed you the criteria in the Windows Update log? It looks for the specific product. So there's a lot really kind of going on behind the scenes that people don't necessarily realize that it's happening, right? And it's interesting once you start getting into it, and once you start actually looking at all the nitpicky little things that we do, you really kind of learn a lot. And sometimes maybe too much. It's like, why did you do that? Why are you doing that? That's crazy. Okay, let's go back to the 2019 box, because I think I had one more thing that I kind of wanted to show that was kind of cool. Let's see. Not really. Import update. Is there, Greg, is there anything that you want to see specifically?
Nothing specific for me. Let me see. Anybody else want to throw anything in chat? Any specific questions?
We got a couple minutes.
There was a couple questions about tweaks for IIS. If there's anything there that you might mention.
Yeah, IIS tweaks. We definitely want to do that, don't we? So your app pool by default, I don't know if they changed it in 2019. I don't think they did. Your WSUS app pool, the recycling, you definitely want to change your private memory usage. Unchecking it leaves it unlimited. I personally won't do that. A lot of people do. And you want to kind of keep an eye on that. Let's actually go. I have some notes on this. Typically what I like to do is I like to set this to, depending on what the server is used for. So typically I like to set that between a third and a half of whatever the RAM on the box is. Your mileage may vary, of course, right? If it's a dedicated machine, I might take more than 50%. I might try to pull like 75%, just depending on how many clients I have. And obviously what the box is actually doing at the time, right? If I'm sharing it with like a management point or something like that, then I'm definitely not going to give it 75%. Mm-hmm. And I won't, if I'm only running 4 gig of RAM, I'm not giving it 75%. Right? So use your best judgment. You can also kind of watch watch W3WP, and especially around like high scanning times. So just keep an eye on it, watch how much it's using. When it hits the limit, it'll actually spawn another W3WP process. So you can kind of get an idea of how quickly it is recycling. If it feels a little bit too quickly, then it probably is, right? If you're sitting there watching it, W3WP, oh, crud, I hit it in like under 2 minutes, you got a problem. If it's staying pretty good for a couple of hours, yeah, you're fine. Another cool thing, and actually let's do a shout out to Brian for reminding me, is let's talk about importing updates. So catalog. And yeah, when you import an update, you got to go, unless somebody knows differently. Please tell me if you know differently. You got to use IE. Yay. So when you import updates, and like I said, that puts the update flag on it. When you import updates, you set IE basically as your default browser for a little bit. You go into here, and hey, I need a specific update. So let's go. Let's go super old school. Remember the Win7 roll up? Who remembers that monster? I don't even know if it's still in here. Probably not. Hey, it doesn't matter what I'm adding. Let's import that sucker. Waiting. There is an error that comes along with this sometimes. And it's a weirdo little like registry key setting. So if you're trying to import updates and you get error, and I'll give you the code as well, because I actually ran into this the other day and I'm like, oh man, I bet you other people are running into this. There is a registry key, and I will put it on the GitHub repo as well. And I'll note it.
Speaking of repo, are those your main channels? You use GitHub and Twitter, or do you have a blog or other things?
Yeah, Twitter is my main deal. I don't really have time for a blog. I do docs, right? So I write a lot all during the day. I don't want to do it again. Usually, like my free time at work is spent poking products, right? Going, how does this work? Yeah, I'm really bad about that. Yeah, so typically it's just the GitHub and Twitter. Occasionally I'll dump something out there, and then sometimes I'm really bad and it will take me a while to get to it. I'm sorry. Right. I think, yeah. Somebody was like, oh, where's your lab script? I think it took me like 3 months to get it out. I'm sorry. I'm a horrible person.
Julie posted in the chat that Meghan's blog equals docs.microsoft.com. So that's it.
Yeah, a lot of it has been pulled in. And yeah, so the whole declining WSUS updates that made it into the product, right? We actually see that. And Good. Configuration Manager does that, which is kind of cool. So that was like my little feather in my cap going, hey, I got the product changed, right? Yeah. Yay! And here it is. So yes, there is a registry key for in case I'm just going to pull this over right here. So, hey, here's the error code. I will put this in the log. Basically said, blah, it was proxy stuff. And it's a registry key. Yeah, this used strong crypto for .NET. Thanks to Brian for that. He totally reminded me. He's like, no, remember? I was like, no, yeah.
Johnny had a question here. When you do this type of import, if it's superseded later, what happens? Do you need to go do other work here? Are there cleanup? Go ahead.
I mean, yeah, if it's superseded later, I mean, it's treated like any other update in WSUS, right? I will see, like my 1607 guy, right? I can see that he's superseded. This might not actually be good. Let's see if I can search him. Let's see if I remember the KB number I pulled in. Oh, here's that works one. I think I'll just search them. And so like this one. Yeah, it's just treated like any other update. So if it's superseded, you have a script to decline it, it'll decline. Just like anything, right?
Okay.
Because all it is looking, so typically speaking, oh, actually, I mean, there is, so when you're looking at our good old, come on, options, click. When you're looking at your cleanup, right? This is a great time to run SQL Profiler or whatever the new shiny thing for that is. Sorry, I'm kind of a curmudgeon. I'm still pretty happy with SQL Profiler. A lot of the times what I'll do is I'll say, okay, just I'll say, give me the superseded updates that not approved and are currently not needed by any clients. There's more to the story, right? So typically what I do is I just run my cleanup, and behind the scenes, I'd be running SQL Profiler, and I would be looking, nothing's 30 days old in this lab, sorry. So that's the downside of using SSDB, right? It's, oh no, everything's brand new, basically. So what I would actually be doing is looking at SQL Profiler, looking at the stored procedure, and from there going into it, and then I'd be reading and trying to figure out like what the heck is it actually doing. And it was pretty straightforward. I have like an old email that explains the whole thing out. But yeah, there is. I think it's just a flat stored procedure that does it. So when somebody has a question, that's all I do, right? Hey, I'm just going to go read the stored procedure, or hey, I'm going to go search my email because I already read that stored procedure and I dumped it out previously, and then I'm going to look and go, oh, did anything change? No, great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good.
So yeah, don't discount this SDB. It's super simple, right? It's very, very easy to use. It's easy to look at. And you learn a lot about how updates are built, how WSUS is built, and how they actually function just by reading stored procedures, looking at the Windows update log, and kind of seeing what happens. And again, with the SQL Profiler too. Yep.
Okay.
And I think I'm out of time. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. Was somebody going to ask a question? Go ahead.
This is Lesser Brian. I was going to ask a follow-up question about that. Like, so when he's talking about importing updates and supersedence, it's like if he imported update A and it's not superseded, it's not just going to magically become superseded because it's superseded in the catalog later, right? He would have to import the new update manually that supersedes it, or not.
Well, it should actually show superseded when it becomes superseded, but you might not have the superseding update in, right? Because when an update's superseded, typically we're going to revise it, right? It's a revision number, right? It's superseded now. So all that is kind of built in there.
Oh,
go ahead.
Will that get, so if I import it, will it sync will I get new revisions without having to manually re-import it from that point on?
I suspect so, but I have
okay.
not. I suspect so. So if you find out something different, please let me know. But yeah, I think so. Oh, you know what? That's
Well,
actually
it's not that relevant for Windows 10, right? Because everything's cumulative.
correct.
For example, in March, we had an out-of-band patch for that little printing issue. So that was not released to WSUS. You had to import that. But then the next releases for that Windows 10 OS all superseded it because it's rolled right in.
Yeah, but you were probably also synchronizing that product too, right? You're synchronizing the Win 10 product. So but in the case of something like, let's say Microsoft Works, right? I'm wondering, I'm like, will it actually supersede if I import it into the catalog and I don't sync the product? That's actually a really good question.
Yeah, I see.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll revise. I don't know. That's a good question. Okay.
All right. One final question for you. Go ahead.
Oh, I want to put that in my notes because it's actually kind of an interesting question.
All right. All right. If you have findings and you want to share them, I'm sure Brian or myself will happily help echo those out, or you'll just admit it and talk someone. But, yeah, that'd be great. Final question for you. What are the scenarios where you would need multiple WSUS databases synchronized?
What do you mean by multiple? Like, you mean like a parent-child relationship? So
I don't know, Timothy, if you want to come off.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Hi, this is Timothy. So I have a situation where a group that I'm working with actually has multiple WSUS databases sitting on management point, SEC management points. One is in Australia, one is in the UK, and then there's actually two. One is an ICBM on the US side, and then the standard management point on the US side. And what we're seeing is that at times when there's the synchronization that occurs, sometimes it picks the US management point to do the synchronization, but sometimes it's picking either the UK or the Australia distribution point. And so my question is really, ultimately, is there a way around that? Can we always set our US instance to be the synchronization point? And then kind of secondly, I guess, I've always imagined that it would be important to have WSUS databases on the other two areas, but I'm not sure. I'm not certain if that's the best approach. So any insight there would be very helpful.
So I'm assuming, based on your description, you're using Configuration Manager. You're probably single primary site, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And you have multiple software update points for the single primary site, and they are geographically dispersed.
Correct.
Okay. And are you sharing your SUSDB across those three oceans?
That is correct also. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what you're running across is, wow, actually, that's kind of cool because you're pulling that information across the wire across a freaking pond. That's fun. But I understand kind of why you did it, right? So beware of full scans. But what you're actually seeing is that basically when you share the WSUS database, the three front ends are basically interchangeable to Configuration Manager. It's the old like NLB setup. It's a front end server. There, I can show you where it is in the WSUS database as soon as I find it. And it's called like a front end master server or something along those lines. But that can change. And depending on who is in that position is who syncs with Microsoft Update. But that's why you're actually seeing, sometimes it could be Australia that's initiating the synchronization or synchronizing with Microsoft Update. And
Sure.
TB reference, I think it is. TB ref. Let's go look at it. Anybody have I suspect that's what it is. Now, give me a sec. No, I won't. Okay.
I guess I'd say along with that, then, is that maybe the best approach to take, or is there a more efficient way of kind of achieving what we're looking for?
There you go. That's what it is right there. So that's really just kind of how the way it works with Configuration Manager. And here it is. It's the TB reference table. It's this NLB front end server, master front end. And that's the one that's going to be synchronizing with Microsoft Update. So if you do a select star from TB reference against your SUSDB, I suspect what you're going to see is that guy's actually changing. And that's the guy who syncs. In your situation, you know, especially when you're so geographically just separate, I would hate to say it, you might be better off with 3 separate SUSDBs and your 3 subs. It really depends on kind of how you want to set it up, right? How's your bandwidth situation? Do those machines from Australia tend to come over here a lot? I suspect probably not. How are your boundaries set up? And
Yeah,
that's going to be your kicker. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but you know, that's also, hey, instead of 1 SUSDB to maintain, it's 3 SUSDBs, but it's really not that bad.
Right.
Especially with Configuration Manager doing a lot of it for you.
Sure. Wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, not a problem.
All right, and with that, Megan, I think we'll thank you greatly. This has been very, very informative. We had some good comments. I think we should try to see if we can have you back for a radio call-in show. Just do some Q&As. I think that would be good. But really appreciate your time. And
hey, thanks.
Yeah,
I suspect some of this you won't be able to use, but it's kind of cool to look at, right? If you pick up a little nugget, that's all that matters, really.
It's nice to look under the hood. I think several people learned a nugget or two in your session today, so that's definitely worth the price of admission. So thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, I will share out my screen as